Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
Welcome back to my conversation with Tamara Bray, the Chief Human Resources Officer at DCP Midstream, a Fortune 500 natural gas company based in Denver, Colorado. We've been looking back at her incredible 30-year career in talent management, and now, Tamara, I want to talk about the function and the future of HR, because those folks have been through an awful lot recently. What do you say to people who want to reach the level of success that you've achieved in HR?
So I would say that for me personally, without question, the last 3 years has been probably the most dynamic in my career. And I've been doing this for a lot of years now. With COVID, with flexibility, with the great resignation. But to me, these are just challenges and opportunities for those of us that work in the function. You know, how do you lead through that? How do you manage through it? How do you get your organization to accept the dynamics of the world around us and to leverage the work of HR and leadership to still have great results? It means also flexing in terms of our mindset and our expectations and our processes and procedures. So what I love about the last 3 years is it has forced me and my team to think about things and solve problems very differently and more flexibly than we have in the past. So I think the function of HR, the folks that have really responded to the dynamics of the workforce that we're experiencing nowadays, are becoming much more skilled, savvy, professional HR leaders. And it's pushed us to a place where I think we absolutely can do our best work.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for years, we've been talking about, before the last 3 years, we've been talking about HR having a seat at the table. Now, clearly, Tamara, you have a seat at the table in your organization. So many HR leaders are struggling for that vital voice in corporations. What would your advice be to them to ensure that their voice is heard?
I believe that voices will be heard when there are recommendations put on the table that will benefit the organization and translate into business results. And for us, the last few years, there have been tremendous opportunities to say the world has changed and expectations for employees or prospective employees has changed. And here's how we need to pivot to be able to attract the talent that we need and be able to retain those people to do the work that we need to be done. And so we flexed all of our cerebral muscles that we have, I think, to say, wow, we were over here and now we have to move over here, and we have to bring our leaders with us, and we have to be able to find a way to show some organizational benefit for it. And it's, I think most employers would say, we can't deliver the results we need if we don't have the people on board to deliver those results. And so it all starts with, recruiting. I think that recruiting is I describe it as the front door to the future of the company. Mm-hmm. If you can't get them to the front door and across the threshold, then you have a gap in your deliverables to the organization. And so I think this whole concept of seat at the table, I wish it would just go away.
I agree.
Because we just need to lean in and say, we have ideas that are going to benefit the business. Here's how it's going to benefit us. Are you on board? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. And you can bring forward ideas that the leaders can say, ooh, I see how this can help us to get talent, help us to keep talent, help us to deliver results. Then it's hard for them to say no and not to listen to the recommendations being put forward.
Brilliant. Is there any specific data that has helped you achieve that kind of voice in HR leadership and leadership of the entire company? Any specific data points that have really helped you lift over this concept that you might not have a seat at the table in HR?
Most people often don't think of HR as being a very data-driven function, but we do our homework, and we come to the table with what's going on and what are people asking of us, and what is market competitive conditions and enable to enable us to have the best employees. And so I try not to just come into the room and say, I have this crazy idea. I try to come into the room and say, hey, I want to share with you guys some data that we have around the working world, and here's how we might want to think about things. Or here's a lot of noise we're hearing from our employees, and here's a thing that is creating distraction. Here's how we could eliminate that distraction. It's really about problem solving around business challenges. And it's no different, I think, than if you were a chief financial officer or you were a CIO of an organization. We're all problem solvers. We identify problems, we research options, we bring together a business case, and we put it out in front of the leadership team. And that's how you get things done.
I love that. And I love your focus on data-driven decisions. When I speak in many different speaking engagements across the country, in my second book, Dare to Care in the Workplace, I teach people the cost of vacancy number, right? And it shocks me that many HR leaders and, general business function leaders don't think of that very frequently, and how much, if you measure your cost of vacancy and show it to the leadership that are making decisions with you, how much impact you can make. Do you use that factor ever in your business?
We do, and you triggered a thought for me, Kathleen. Is one of the other things that I think works really well, and it's a basic concept around change management, but it is this notion of small group to large group, right? And so, when you're identifying a problem, or more importantly, solutions, I test it with the leader that has a problem first, or somebody that I trust on the leadership team, and say, here's how we're thinking about this. Have we lost our mind, or does this sound reasonable to you? And so generally, I do not walk into the room without understanding what reaction I'm going to get, whether I've talked to one member on the executive committee or I've talked to each of them individually. But I generally try to ensure that I have some support, and I've tested out our proposal before I walk in and present it to the entire team.
Yeah, and that's just being a good business leader. Test your theory in small pockets of the organization and get buy-in before you make the big pitch.
That's exactly right. And it goes a long way. And it allows you to answer problems in advance, or questions that they'll have in advance. Because usually when you're testing it out, they'll say, well, what about this? And what about that? And if you don't have the answer, it allows you to go get the answer. And if you do have the answer, it allows you to test the answer and see how it's received before you walk in and are presenting something that a whole bunch of people are going to weigh in on.
Absolutely. Then you have the data, as you said brilliantly earlier, to back up. Here's the questions we explored, so there'll be less pushback on great ideas.
That's correct.
Awesome. Well, I saw you featured at Irresistible 2022. How was that? How did that experience go for you?
Oh, it was incredible. To have a chance to stand on the stage at a Josh Burson conference is an honor, for sure.
You've made it, Tamara. Look at you.
Well, that credit, and I stood in front of that entire room and said, the brilliant minds that created this program that I am telling you about, these people are sitting here with me today, and they're the real geniuses behind this program. So I just got to be the person that stood up and bragged about the great work that folks on my team delivered. But it was quite an honor, and quite intimidating at the same time.
I'm sure you were fantastic. And I think you were speaking about the reclassifying hourly workers. Can you shed some light on what you shared at Irresistible 2022?
Yes, our presentation was about a program that started out being called the Workforce of Tomorrow. And by the time we implemented it, it had morphed into the workforce of today. And the basic concept of that was we have a dispersed workforce and we had inefficiencies with our classification system. And so I'll just give a simple example. We would send a mechanic out to a location where there was an operational problem with a piece of equipment. The mechanic might be on site, or he might have to drive an hour or 2 hours from a different location to perform the work. And he would often get there and find out, he'd do a bunch of his mechanical stuff and then find out that there was an electrical issue for which he was not qualified to do the work. And so he would call an electrician who would have to drive from Lord knows where, or would have to wait till he was available, etc. And so the work would sit and couldn't be completed. So from that was born this notion of how do we give people the option that are work in a traditional classification, such as a mechanic or an electrician or any number of other classifications, but to broaden out. So I would liken it to a tree. So the trunk is the base classification, and all the branches and outgrowth are the opportunity to get skilled in different classifications and to earn additional pay for branching out. And so we were sort of busting this myth of a mechanic is a mechanic is a mechanic. A mechanic is a mechanic, but he's also then capable and getting paid for doing some other pieces of the work that allows us to perform work much more efficiently. We partnered with a learning system that Josh Burson and the CEO were friends of, and that's how Josh learned about this program. And he called us and said, "Hey, can you tell me what you guys are doing?" And that morphed into participation and speaking at his conference this year.
Wonderful. So it's, coloring outside the lines of what traditional duties might be and teaching people additional skills. And the benefit for the human involved is they diversify their skill set and become more marketable within the organization and more valuable within the organization and to your customers. And the benefit to the organization is you have more efficiency and productivity overall.
Absolutely. It's definitely a win-win for everybody, but a very complex program to implement.
Oh, sure. Yes. Did you run into any, tree trunks that didn't want to have branches?
Well, we do. And
using your analogy.
And we didn't force anybody to branch out. What we did say is it's up to the individual and their supervisor to figure out what makes sense. So somebody can't just say, I'm a mechanic and I want to add electrical skills, because the supervisor has to say, that's not where we need you to focus. We need you to have instrumentation tech skills or something different. Are you willing to do that? So the decision on how people branch out is a collaboration between the employee and the supervisor that knows where some of the challenges and inefficiencies are. So we do have a few people that haven't extended themselves to branching out very far, but a lot of people are very motivated because they see it benefits themselves in terms of they control a little bit about their pay from the pace of their learning. And it benefits the business, and it makes it a stronger business as well. And then they're rewarded, in different ways through our, annual bonus plan or other things. So it's a mutually beneficial program that we are really super proud of. And it really was built by members of my team that did
Of course.
the phenomenal phenomenal work of pulling this together.
And what percentage of people have taken advantage of it so far?
Yeah, very, very large number of employees. And every year, every quarter, we track the percentage of skill point gains. And it's really been a pleasant surprise to see how many people have engaged in their own independent learning to broaden their skills and enable them to do more work more efficiently for the organization and earn more money for doing so.
I think that sounds like a win-win-win for everyone involved. And, DCP and you in particular is very dedicated to the elevation of women. I noticed that you just had your elevated DCP day, and then you also support outstanding women in business. You're one of the major sponsors here in Denver, Colorado. So tell me why DCP is so dedicated to women leadership. Other than the obvious, you're a great gal.
It's just the right thing to do. We hire great people, period. Whether they're men, women, minorities, we just hire really good people. And it only makes sense that we make sure that their voices are heard, that they have seats at the table, that barriers are removed from them being able to do their best work for the organization. So when women from our Business Women's Network group came to the executive committee and said, we have this idea. We'd like to do a conference. We'd like to invite it's by the women for the women. We'd like to invite every female in DCP to this Elevate conference. And would you support it? It was, and by the way, I'm the only female on the executive committee. So there were 7 colleagues that were men, and there was a resounding yes. Not a lot of, well, how much are you going to spend? And tell me, the agenda. And it was, yes, we support this. It's really, really proud moment as a member of the executive committee of this team, but also from my experience, because I attended the conference and I've been to a million, maybe not a million, but a lot of conferences in my years. This was by far one of the most inspirational, uplifting, rewarding conferences I have ever attended. And it was all internally built, internally delivered for the women of DCP.
That is beautiful. What made it so inspirational for you?
There were some really raw and honest moments about the experiences of women and the challenges that women have faced. And I think there's strength in numbers, right? So when you're in a room of all women and you're talking about things that you have experienced, and you find a friend that understands and says, I've experienced that, and I've experienced that as well. And you say, well, we have the power to make this different and to educate others in some of the things that we've experienced. It also gives us a perspective around what other minorities may be experiencing in the organization. And it creates just a tremendous amount of awareness about situations that aren't what we would want for our sons or daughters or brothers in the workforce. And we can commit to creating awareness across, all of our employee base and finding ways to, when you see something, say something, and how do you handle that? And what does it look like? And there just was safety in numbers in this room, and to recognize that, so many of the people had been through experiences, and maybe they questioned, now they question themselves and their own sense of confidence, and they could have somebody sitting at the table with them that could say, no, you're wrong. You're great. And, just to be elevated by one another was the power of the messaging of the 2 days that we spent together.
And to be heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone wants to matter. How does the Elevate at DCP fit into your DE and I and B? Now we have to have a B to it too. Initiatives.
Oh, it's right in the center.
Okay.
It's spot on. And, I would hope that other companies, I was very vocal about it on LinkedIn and very proud to share what, our women had delivered for one another. And I would encourage every organization to engage their employee resource groups in what how can you make a difference? How can you make a large scale difference? And committing to the investment in something like we did, a 2-day conference, because I guarantee you these women left motivated and committed to this company. And the cost will more than make up for what was spent on those 2 days.
Well, it was priceless, really, truly. You gave people a voice. I mean, and they could be heard, and I really do believe at the center of it all, everyone wants to matter.
Everyone should matter. Everyone deserves to matter. And you are right. I love priceless as the description for this conference because the return was so much greater than the cost of the
That's
conference.
so great. That's great. Well, I'm a fan of Josh Berson's too. So I just want to ask you, other than Josh, who we both love, and Josh was also on this podcast as well, Dare to Care in the Workplace, what other HR gurus do you follow?
Oh my goodness gracious. I don't even know where to start, Kathleen. I like Dave Ulrich. I've always loved Dave Ulrich. He's one that I think was at the forefront of the function, has been for years. There's just too many to name. And I don't seek necessarily specific individuals per se, but I seek forums where there are multiple voices. And that's what I love about Josh Bersin. I mean, he brings a lot of industry expertise to the forefront for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
He makes it visible and it's shared in the conferences. And it's not all Bersin content, it's employer experience content that I think is the power of building a strong HR function, is knowing, who else doing cool and great things out there and how's it impacting their organization, and then finding the way to say, would this fit for us and work for us, and can we have the same results as somebody else if we do something similar? So I hate to pinpoint, just one or two names, but clearly Josh and Dave are a couple that are great. But it is the forums where lots of HR people come together and share and collaborate, where I think the future of the function comes from.
I completely agree with you, and having the courage to challenge the status quo and push against the sides of what the human resources function used to be and what it needs to be for our companies to succeed.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I would say, that your name should be in that list, Kathleen, because you're writing your books on Dare to Care, and you're bringing these podcasts to your audience so that, even if somebody walks away with one nugget of an idea and inspiration that they want to try in their organization and make it a better place, then there's tremendous value in that.
One little conversation at a time, right? And all we can do is one little conversation, one relationship at a time to really put our people first. That's my whole mission in life.
Well, you are certainly contributing to that.
Well, that is a huge compliment. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask about your horsies. How are they doing?
They challenge me every day. It's work of a different sort, I would say. But, I get questioned a lot about the concept of work-life balance, especially from women. It came up at the Elevate conference. And for me, because horses are human. I mean, they're not a human being. They're a being. They're a live being that has
Lovely
emotions.
beings. Yes.
They're lovely beings, and they're really sentient beings. They can communicate in their own ways. They have their own attitudes. They have their moods, and so they present, a different sort of challenge. But you can also have a very deep and meaningful bond. And so horses are my sport, and it's where I go to get physical, mental, and emotional recharge. And lots of people, I encourage people to find their thing. This is my thing, and it fills all three big buckets for me.
Mhm.
People play tennis or football or bike or whatever, and they might get the physical and they might get some mental from that. But I question whether how that is. The emotional bucket being filled, and I'm just fortunate enough to have picked a sport that can both frustrate the heck out of you and fill up all three buckets at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, you are amazing. I've missed you, and I'm so glad we could have this chat today. If people want to reach out to you, how would they do so, Tamara?
They can find me on LinkedIn, for sure. They can find me at dcpmidstream.com. And I'm always happy to make connections outside of my current group of lovely people that I've connected with.
That's wonderful. You're very generous of spirit and soul, and thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Dare to Care in the Workplace.
Kathleen, it's so lovely to reconnect, and thank you for having me today.
You are very welcome. And that's Tamara Bray, the Chief Human Resources Officer of DCP Midstream. And that will do it for another episode of Dare to Care in the Workplace. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left me a review so more folks like yourself can discover the show. Until we meet again.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.